Today, I'm going to go through 8 steps on how a finance leader can start in a new industry and really make some impact. Hi, my name's Alysha Randall from Financial Leadership Foundations, and I train new and aspiring finance leaders within a startup or scale up. So if that sounds like something you could be interested in, then please click on subscribe and you'll hear about my weekly videos. So starting in a new job in a new industry of a finance leader can be quite a daunting task, but you do have quite a good opportunity to make an impact, particularly if you're moving into a startup or scale up for the first time. I have talked about what a startup or scale up actually is and the complexity of that actual industry. So if you haven't worked for a startup or scale up before, I talked about that in another video and I'll leave that above and below. But today I just wanted to focus on that transition when moving into a new industry. So the first one is to do your research. So before starting in a new job in a new industry, it's really important to do your research. So whether it's looking at the actual company, what it does, how it gets customers, its revenue recognition and things like that. You also want to understand its competitors. So a finance leader should really understand the competitors and should really understand the industry. So look for industry publications, search market trends, and analyze financial reports to understand the company's health. So in the UK, you can easily go to Companies House and download financial statements. Particularly if you did this already for the interview for the company you're working at, but you could also look at competitors so you can get a good feel for the industry and what your new company is up against. Regardless of size, sometimes it's really good to download a market leader in your industry. So whether that be in your current region or say the US or another country, try and understand their financials and what they are really measuring against, and that particularly with KPIs and non-financial KPIs, and that really helps you understand your new company as well as the company's risks and what they should potentially be going for. So going through your new company's social media, website and articles also gives you a good understanding, but hopefully you did that before the interview. If your company is regulated, so for example, financial services in the UK, we have the FCA, it's a good idea to understand what that means if you don't know already. Number 2 is building relationships. So relationship building, it's super important for any leadership role. Again, I've talked about business partnering. I'll leave a link for that. But it's especially important when you're starting a new job in a new industry. So you really want to get to know your team and your colleagues and your stakeholders. And potentially you may want to attend industry events, meet with vendors and suppliers, and develop good connections within the industry. So if you're moving into a new type of business model such as SaaS, then get to know other finance leaders who also work in that kind of environment. So you can really kind of share knowledge. And I can tell you right now, having relationships with finance leaders in a similar industry is invaluable over time. Number 3 is understanding the business model. So I have touched on this, but it's particularly important to understand that and how it generates revenue. So it will guide you to identify opportunities and help you develop the financial performance and make strategic directions. So it's very practical and will help you with, say, budgeting and forecast modeling. But if you don't really know what the drivers are of the new business you're working with, it's really detrimental. You need to learn that quite quickly. So if you can do that before you even start with a company, even better. Number 4 is focusing on cost optimization. So obviously an important responsibility of finance leader is to optimize cost and extend runway. So you really want to see where you can do some process improvements. Can you outsource some non-core functions? Can you implement a cost optimization strategy and work with the team to really drive cost savings? So extending cash runway, it's a big part of startups. Managing costs will kind of help you there, and also allocating resources effectively. I mean, this is across the board, but if you keep that in mind when you're starting a new industry, it's really important. Number 5 is driving innovation. So finance leader, we should always be constantly looking for ways to innovate and improve financial performance, whether that's implementing new processes, new technologies, new financial products or services, and looking at new markets. So looking at inefficient processes, particularly if you come from a really efficient company, and especially if you're first into a startup or scale up, you may find that there's something, the processes are quite manual and you're quite keen to implement more efficient processes. So looking for those when you're first starting in a new company can always be welcomed. Just keep a back mind of some change management skills as well. You don't want to be stepping on other people's toes, and you also want to make sure that it works within your new industry. Number 6 is communicating effectively. So effective communication is key in leadership roles, but it's especially important when you're starting in a new role and a new industry. So you need to be quite clear and concise in your communication. Make sure you're really listening to what somebody is telling you, and particularly listening to the needs and concerns of your team and of your stakeholders, especially because they understand the industry better than you. So especially in those first 3 months, it doesn't hurt to ask what I say, dumb questions. So because you're new in the industry, you can very much say, I'm new in this industry, can you tell me XYZ? And people often are very good at helping you there. So use those first couple of months to upskill by developing those relationships, communicating really well, and asking lots of questions. Number 7 is building a strong team. So to be successful as a finance leader, you need to make sure that you have a really strong team around you. So get to know the team that you have within you, find out what their skill set is, and then decide whether you need to add to the team that you have right now or whether you can develop the team that you currently have. Number 8 is focusing on long-term value creation. So thinking about how you can develop that long-term plan so that when the company grows or when you come to certain risks or whether you're looking at longer-term goals, how can you and your finance function help support that? So rather than just focusing on short-term gains, you do want to plan for that longer term. When you're first starting in a new industry, you probably do need to focus initially on the first 1 to 2 months on any low-hanging fruit, if there is any, or any short-term gains, some quick wins, and so that you kind of get into a good stead. But ideally, you want to think about the bigger vision and where the business is going in the next 1 to 5 years. And by doing that initial work, you can really demonstrate your value quite quickly. So if you want to learn more about starting in a new leadership role, obviously I'm going to recommend having a look at the resources that we have on offer. But I would also recommend the book, The First 90 Days. It is brilliant for leaders coming into the business and what you need to do for those first 90 days. So how do you kind of set yourself up for success? So I'll leave a link below for that book, and I'll leave a link below as well for some of the resources that we have. But moving into a new industry, if you do some of the research, do a bit of homework, shall we say, before you start in the new role, then no doubt you'll be quite successful in your new role. So hopefully you found that useful, and don't forget to click subscribe, and I'll see you next week.